Hello again, Libra. It's Dadhichi here. Good to have your company. It's February 2016. I'm from astrological.com.au, and as usual, just taking a brief look at some of what I consider the most important transits for the month against that backdrop of the longer transits. And I'm trying to keep it more thematic right now rather than, giving you the usual date by date drill. I'll probably jump around a little bit, because if we look at the theme of this, and I think Mars in your second house, there's a couple of very important points. Mars and Pluto seem to stand out right now. Pluto has been and will continue to be in the foreground of your horoscope for a long time to come. And so your ruling planet Venus is from very early part of February moving into a strong conjunction of Pluto, and that will perfect on the 6th of February in this domestic sphere, and the moon on the 1st of February moves into an exact conjunction with Mars in your second house. Now, here's the thing, it doesn't matter whether you win an argument. It really doesn't. You are really quite a strongly opinionated person, at least during this cycle. And it seems that you have some forceful opinions right now and a desire to make those opinions known. With the moon, your career planet moving through your finance sector, some of these opinions may have a lot to do with money and or the family circumstance, people in your family, with that Venus moving into the conjunction of Pluto. But you've got to understand, winning doesn't really matter, because it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to change their opinion, even if they nod, yep, right, okay, Libra, yep, you're right, yep. Inside their brains, they may not really give a shit about, what you're saying. They might just be agreeing because they got an appointment and want to get the hell out of there. So remember that when you go into battle this month, and we do see around the 7th, which is just after that perfection of conjunction Venus and Pluto, you have a square aspect from the Sun to Mars. Now, this can have a couple of other connotations as well. 5th house is speculation, love affairs. If we just continue the thread of finance, though, which I think is what my intuition is telling me is more to do with your financial circumstances, the moon and Mars ruling your finances as well. There could be some bitter disputes over money this month. We see Mercury also in the 4th house, so there's a lot of communication going on in your domestic sphere. And so you need to be careful how you handle the situation of being abstracted by others. There's a new moon, and that takes place also in the 5th house. So for some of you that are parents, pardon me, some of these issues may surround communication with kids, the way they're coping with money, some of their career aspirations if they're older children, or even indeed their educational requirements. For some of you, there may be disagreements with the way they are being educated. There may be a particular teacher, for example, who is not educating them in line with what you feel is appropriate. They may not be paying due attention to your child. So educational issues for your children seem to be also a point of contention this month. But Pluto and Mercury show some strong need to really transform your environment where you live and give yourself the scope to, spiritually blossom in the environment that you live in. Now, that's not going to happen easily, because we see, Pluto was also seen as a bit of a demolisher of things. For some of you, this is a physical demolition. You may be knocking down a house to build a new structure, renovating, pulling down walls or wallpaper, getting rid of old furniture. But it can also have a lot to do with the way you relate to the people you live with, having them understand your point of view. And as I began the reading saying that just because they seem to agree doesn't mean that you've actually convinced them of anything. In this instance, I think your silence will be probably the most powerful weapon that you have. The full moon takes place in the 12th house of your horoscope, a spiritual area, a low-key area of the horoscope, and Jupiter and the North Node, or the karmic point, happen to be transiting that part of the zodiac in absolute perfect conjunction right now. Now, I talked about this over the last couple of months, but having the full moon there is pretty significant and can really open up your emotions to some of those things in your past that may have been burdening you, may have been obstructing you in your relationships. And certainly because the moon, as I mentioned earlier as well, is your career planet, this is perhaps something that takes you back into the past to learn from your mistakes. And if you haven't, what I'm saying is you should go back, study the past. You know, what's happened in the past events, is the absolute best predictor of future events. So if you look at the forecast, go back, and of course this position of Jupiter was here in 2002-3. If you want to find out what's going on, it won't be exactly the same, but you can get an insight, a bit of an inkling as to what's happening over the next 12 months through this transit in the same position 12 years later, because it's a 12-year transit. And having the moon in its fullness there may cause you to look back to some of the events that happened then, so that you can learn from those errors and maybe not repeat those mistakes again. It's also, as I said, spiritual. So some of you who are predisposed to spiritual exercises, meditation, self-analysis, might find this a perfect time to be, pulling back from the world, from people, and just finding your own peace and happiness within yourself. And I hope you find that. In the meantime, you can get more information on this. I'll be back next month, astrology.com.au, the textual reading for the month, along with the yearly readings, which will give you a bit more of an overview for the future, long term. Hope it's a good month for you. See you here again next time. Bye-bye.